Alan Watt has spent decades researching the way cultures are created and altered by those in control. Born in Scotland, he watched as the politicians and media covertly guided the population into a European amalgamation.
Now, living in Canada, Alan is warning that the same process is being used to force our populations into a North American Union without our consent and without full disclosure.
Welcome, Alan.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, Alan, one of the things that I liked, we just watched your video a couple of days ago, and you talk about the hive mentality, how we worker bees basically work our tails off building things for the royal class. How did that happen?
It's in modern and ancient religions, they used to use the symbol of the beehive as a perfect society, where you had the queen at the top, the royalty, and all the workers beneath them that did all the work, of course, with a priestly class or drones kind of managing the food, etc. Right down to deciding which ones would get royal jelly and which ones would become worker bees according to how they were fed. And we find all of these techniques being used today. The hive, the word hive, the term, is being used by big think tanks and institutions to describe the modern society they're bringing into being. It's not here totally yet. We see it all emerging around us, this new, it's really a scientific dictatorship, as Aldous Huxley described it, and it's to be run by professionals and experts, and the public are to be given a new type of government. Really, they call it governance, as opposed to government.
Alan, who do you think is responsible for this one big world government?
It's an amalgamation of very old societies. We find that in the 1800s, for instance, out of Britain, you had societies that were given royal charters to create a new system. Part of the system to be to take over all natural resources of the planet. And one of those societies was the Cecil Rhodes Foundation that eventually blossomed into the Royal Institute for International Affairs. And it's got branches across the planet. Most of your media, your regular media, are members. You have to be invited to become a member. And journalists, newspaper owners, and the Council on Foreign Relations is their main one in the U.S. Now, in the United States, the Council on Foreign Relations came out on national television in Canada in 2005 as their own organization for the first time, and they admitted that they had basically drafted up the drafts to be signed by presidents and prime ministers for the amalgamation of the Americas. Now, they are classed officially as a non-governmental, non-political body, and here they are drafting up legislation which they hand to every government that then signs it into law. So we're not run by any kind of democracy by any means or any stretch of the imagination. We are already, and we have been for a long time, run by this super government, this parallel government, as Professor Carroll Quigley called it in his book Tragedy and Hope. It's made up of the big institutions like the Royal Institute for International Affairs, Council on Foreign Relations, the RAND Corporation with think tanks, many other think tanks, big foundations like the Rockefellers, etc., contribute to it not just financially, but by using their own think tanks and networking together to bring this new world order. I mean, we've got to understand that even David Rockefeller hands out World Citizenship Awards. He's been handing them out for about almost 20 years now. Well, how can they be doing World Citizen Awards if we're still supposedly sovereign nations? There's a dilemma here, and it's never explained to the public. The fact is, since the United Nations was set up and signed in 1945-46, we have been part of a global system, and any country since then that's been attacked by NATO or the UN forces has simply been a rogue nation, a nation that didn't come in to become standardized under this one same system that they term to the public democracy, but in fact is a totalitarian scientific type of dictatorship where everything is ordered perfectly from birth to grave. They want a transition phase as we go through the next transition of creating new types of humans. That's in all the newspapers. They call it post-humanism and post-humanism agenda.
Like Aldous Huxley.
Yes, and
Brave New
Aldous
World.
Huxley, remember, he was the grandson of Sir Thomas Huxley, who was the best friend of Charles Darwin, and who then ran with Darwinism after Darwin died. And his son Aldous worked with Tavistock Institute, which was to deal with scientifically created propaganda and mind control out of London, and formulas for the media to copy for perfect propaganda. And his brother, Julian Huxley, became the first CEO of UNESCO because they wanted to get a common education across the world so that everyone would be given the same indoctrination. And he did say indoctrination.
You can see it happening in Germany, Alan, because the government there is forbidding parents to homeschool because the country says they want to have the child from 2 years of age up till 21 years of age to provide their own brand of indoctrination.
Right.
So and there's
I didn't catch any of that.
Okay, what Richard was saying was that in Germany they're working very hard to stop the homeschooling. They won't allow them to homeschool anymore,
Yes.
and they're specifically doing that so that the children are indoctrinated according to state rules, regulations, thought.
Yep.
Any idea of that happening in other places in the world?
Everything that happens in the United States, Canada, or Britain is happening across the whole planet at the same time. As I say, we are already under a governmental world system, and the big institutions, as I say, they draft up legislation. Every law that's been passed, even to do with building codes, farming codes, every code you can imagine to do with living, food industry, has come from the United Nations for the last 50 years, and now it's even more apparent. They've come out in the open and admitted that.
Right. Alan, we have to go for a commercial break right now. When we come back, I'd like to talk about the privatization of what used to be municipal services like water and power and how that is used as a method of control. We'll be right back.